Om Namo Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirek Nashta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Neshtiki Hare Krishna. We continue in Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1 chapter 19 shloka number 4. Sachintayat इत्थम अथ शृणोति यथा
सचिन्तयन्नित्थम् अथ शृणोत यथा
मुने सूत उक्तः निवृत्ति तक्षक आख्यः
मुनेः सुप्तः
सूत उक्तः
मुनेः सुत उक्तः निवृत्तिः तक्षक आख्यः
स साधु मेनेन चिरेण तक्षका
स साधु मेनेन चिरेण तक्षक
अनलं प्रसक्तस्य विरक्ति कारणम्
अनलं प्रसक्तस्य विरक्ति कारणम्
स चिन्तयन् इत्थम् अथ अशृणोत यथा
सचिन्तयन् इत्थम् अथ अशृणोत यथा
मुनेः सुत उक्तः निवृत्तिः तक्षक आख्यः
मुनेः सुत उक्तः निरुक्तिः तक्षक आख्यः
स साधु मेनेन चिरेण तक्षक
स साधु मेनेन चिरेण तक्षक
अनलं प्रसक्तस्य विरक्ति कारणम्
अनलं प्रसक्तस्य विरक्ति कारणम्
स चिन्तयन् इत्थम् अथ अशृणोत यथा मुनेः सुत उक्तः निवृत्तिः तक्षक आख्यः स साधु मेनेन चिरेण तक्षक अनलं प्रसक्तस्य विरक्ति कारणम्. हरे कृष्ण.
सचिन्तयन् इत्थम् अथ अशृणोत यथा मुनेः सुप्तः उक्तः निरुक्तिः तक्षक आख्यः स साधु मेनेन चिरेण तक्षक अनलं प्रसक्तस्य विरक्ति कारणम्.
Translation and purport by the Srila Prabhupada. While the king was thus repenting, he received news of his imminent death, which would be due to the bite of a snake bird, occasioned by the curse spoken by the sage's son. The king accepted this as good news, for it would be the cause of his indifference toward worldly things. Purport. Real happiness is achieved by spiritual existence or by cessation of the repetition of birth and death. One can stop the repetition of birth and death only by going back to Godhead. In the material world, even by attaining the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, one cannot get rid of the conditions of repeated birth and death. But still, we do not accept the path of attaining perfection. The path of perfection frees one from all material attachment, and thus one becomes fit to enter into the spiritual kingdom. Therefore, those who are materially poverty stricken are better candidates than those who are materially prosperous. Maharaj Parikshit was a great devotee of the Lord and a bona fide candidate for entering into kingdom of God. But even though he was so, his material assets as the emperor of the world were setbacks to perfect attainment of his rightful status as one of the associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky. As a devotee of the Lord, he could understand that the cursing of the Brahmana boy, although unwise, was a blessing upon him, being the cause of detachment from worldly affairs, both political and social. Shamik Muni also, after regretting the incident, conveyed the news to the king as a matter of duty so that king would be able to prepare himself to go back to Godhead. Shamak Muni sent news to king that foolish Shungi, his son, although a powerful Brahmana boy, unfortunately had misused his spiritual power by cursing the king unwantedly. The incident of the king garlanding the Muni was not sufficient cause for being cursed to death. But since there was no way to retract the curse, the king was informed to prepare for death within a week. Both Shamik Muni and the king were self-realized souls. Shamik Muni was a mystic and Maharaj Parikshit was a devotee. Therefore, there was no difference between them in self-realization. Neither of them was afraid of meeting death. Maharaj Parikshit could have gone to the Muni to beg his pardon, but the news of imminent death was conveyed to the king with so much regret by Muni that king did not want to shame the Muni further by his presence there. He decided to prepare himself for his imminent death and find out the way to go back home to Godhead. The life of a human being is a chance to prepare oneself to go back home to Godhead or to get rid of a material existence. The repetition of birth and death, thus in the system of Varna Shram Dharma, every man and woman is trained for this purpose. In other words, the system of Varna Shram Dharma is known also as Sanatan Dharma or the eternal occupation. The system of Varnashram Dharma prepares a man for going back to Godhead, and thus a householder is ordered to go to the forest as a vanaprastha to acquire complete knowledge and then to take sannyasa prior to his inevitable death. Parikshit Maharaj was fortunate to get a 7-day notice to meet his inevitable death. But for the common man, there is no definite notice. Although death is inevitable for all, foolish men forget this sure fact of death and neglect the duty of preparing themselves for going back to Godhead. They spoil their lives in animal propensities to eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy. Such an irresponsible life is adopted by the people in the age of Kali because of a sinful desire to condemn Brahminical culture, God consciousness, and cow protection, for which the state is responsible. The state must employ revenue to advance these three items and thus educate the populace to prepare for death. The state which does so is the real welfare state. The state of India should better follow the examples of Maharaj Parikshit, the ideal executive head, than to imitate other materialistic states which have no idea of the kingdom of Godhead. The ultimate goal of human life, deterioration of the ideals of Indian civilization, has brought about the deterioration of civic life, not only India but also abroad. ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवाञ्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजन सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांच नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Today we continuing Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, chapter 19, shloka number 4. In this shloka, the importance of given the attitude or seeing towards any event which took place, how that event taking Parikshit Maharaj, when he heard he was caused by a Brahmana boy or biting the Takshakana in 7 days, and again Shami Krushi also how they take and what they do after that, and how they prepare for that event. Prabhuji will tell us in detail nicely. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhecha kripa sindhubhe evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavabhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. In Bhagavad Gita 2.13, Krishna explains to Arjuna, Dehinasmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantar praptihi dhiraha tatra na muhyati. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Dhiraha tatra na muhyati. And exactly this particular aspect is being personified right now through this shloka by Parikshit Maharaj. See, this is a very pivotal moment in life of Parikshit Maharaj because he had accidentally disrespected Shamika Rishi because of exhaustion, because of thirst, because of hunger. And what did Shringi, the son of the Brahmana, do? He cursed him to die in 7 days by being bitten by Takshaka snake. So how does a devotee react when death approaches? Never with fear or bitterness, but with gratitude and spiritual urgency. This is the attitude which we are seeing in Parikshit Maharaj, which reflects deep spiritual maturity and the lesson for all spiritual aspirants. That is why in this shloka we see, while the king was repenting, he received news of his imminent death, which would be due to the bite of the snake bird, and that too because of the curse by the sages. The king is accepting this as a good news, for it would be the cause of his indifference towards worldly things. Prabhupada ji, in the purports, is giving us many different aspects. Because here, what is being talked about is information of impending death. What is being talked about is someone cursing you. And in spite of that, what is being talked about is mene, that is acceptance. And what is being talked about is virakti karanam, cause of indifference. And for whom? For prasakatasya, that is one who is too attached. So Prabhupada starts with explaining what is real happiness. Because this material world, as we have been repeatedly hearing, whether it be Bhagavad Gita, whether it be any of the granthas, is temporary. And this is full of miseries. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. So there is no way that we can have any kind of a happiness here. What we try to find happiness into, satisfaction into, is simply illusion, which is created by Maya, the external energy of Krishna, which, if you see, remember in the previous shloka, in the first canto, not previous shloka, in the first canto, when Vedvyasji was meditating upon Krishna, he saw Krishna as the perfect supreme person along with the external energy which was fully under control. So I'm not remembering the shloka words, but this was the exact translation of that shloka, which comes in the 7th chapter of first canto. So Maya is always under the control of Krishna, but then it is something which is illusioning us. And in that illusion, we think that we are the body. We forget our real identity. And still Maya continues to do the job, which is a thankless job. Because Krishna does not want us to forget who we are. Krishna wants us to come back home, back to Godhead. Krishna has simply given us to submission to Maya for our reformation. A small child at times has maybe a wrong habit. So what does the father do? The loving father sends the child under protection of someone who is very strict, who is very disciplined, so that the child can be reformed. It's not that the father wants the child to be always under that strict, disciplined atmosphere. It's just waiting for him to understand the mistake, become little better, and come back. And he's waiting. Similarly, Krishna is waiting for us. And Maharaj Parikshit, because he was a devotee, he was knowing this aspect very, very nicely. And that is why he knew that real happiness can be obtained only by spiritual existence, wherein there is cessation of this Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, repeated cycle. And that can be achieved only by going back home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. To stress this fact, Prabhupada talks that even if we reach Brahma Loka, still there will be death. And we know the falling star, the story of the falling stars. Falling stars are nothing but those who are born on the higher planetary planets, where they cannot die on that planet, so they are kicked out and then they fall down. So that is there in material world. So only devotional service is the path of perfection which can free someone from material attachments. And then once we are not having any material attachments, we can be free to enter the spiritual kingdom. One of the analogies which is given is that there's a small path, and in that small path only a slim person can go. And for that, what the person does is, since he cannot go straight, he stands like this, and side by side he is going. But then the path is so slow, if he tries to carry anything with him, he cannot enter. Similar is the path back home, back to Godhead. If we carry any materialism with us, it stops us. We cannot enter it. So material aspects, material attachments, they have to be left behind. Then only we can go on this path back home, back to Godhead. Maharaj Parikshit was a great devotee. He was a bona fide candidate. And still he had the material assets as an emperor. So though he had the qualifications, those attachments could have been detachments. So he knew that the curse which I am getting now, it is wrong, definitely wrong. But because of that, he will now get detachments from complete worldly affairs. We saw Shamik Rishi chastising his son Shringi. But then he thought that it is his duty, that the king should be knowing this, that he is going to die. So he sends the news to the king. Now Shamik Rishi is also a, what I'll say, liberated person. He was a Muni, he was self-realized. So he knew that meeting of death is not at all bad, but then we should be ready for that. which is the final examination. So he informed this news to the king that the foolish Shringi, he had misused his spiritual power by cursing. So the king accepted this. Now, the king had an opportunity, he had a choice. He could have gone to the Muni to seek his forgiveness, and he could have been forgiven. But then he thought that the Muni itself is so regretting. Now, if I go there, I may shame him further. So it is better that I prepare for the death and find a way to perfect my life and go back home, back to Godhead. Already Kali has approached, so it is not useful to stay here again any longer, or somehow take birth again and be under repentance because of the presence of Kali. This is the only life form as a human being which has a chance to go back to Godhead, to get rid of the material existence, to get rid of the repetition of birth, death. So let me use it wisely. And this is the training that we get in our Varnashrama system. Everyone is trained so that we understand our eternal occupation. The Sanatan Dharma prepares everyone to go back home to Godhead. And that is why in Prabhupada says that after a certain period of life, everyone is recommended to get into Vanaprasthashram so that they can spend more time on acquiring jnana before they take sannyasa, before the inevitable death. Parikshit Maharaj is so fortunate. He's getting a 7-day notice. And that is enabling him to prepare his consciousness properly. For poor souls like us, we don't have a notice. But that is inevitable. We cannot fight death. We cannot prevent death. So while Parikshit Maharaj is having a notice and is going to prepare himself, we don't even have that opportunity. And what we are generally doing is we are spending our lives in animal propensities to do everything that the animal does. And that is why we are doomed. In earlier times when we had the monarchical system, the state used to employ revenues to advance people on the path back home, back to Godhead, to educate people to prepare for death. And that is why they were all real welfare states. But today, we no longer find this. And that is why we are seeing the deterioration of the ideals of the Indian civilization, the deterioration of the civic life, not only in India, but also abroad. And this is all the effect of Kali. But Parikshit Maharaj was knowing everything. And that is why he is preparing. Like we'll be seeing in the second canto, first chapter, 6th shloka, where it is mentioned, Etavan Sakya Yoga Bhyam Sarvadharma Parinishtaya Janmalabha Parapunsam Ante Narayana Skruti. The perfection, the highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. Ante Narayana Smriti. So when prepared for properly, death is a stepping stone to liberation. It is the cause of renunciation, virakti karana. That is what we saw in Krishna book as well, which comes in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam also, where the wives of the Brahmanas explain that attachment to temporary things is cause of bondage, whereas detachment is the cause of liberation. So the approach of Takshaka was a divine arrangement to free Parikshit from lingering material attachments. practical lesson for us is that we should view obstacles as opportunities. Even harsh realities like death can serve the purpose of spiritual advancement. Secondly, we should be always prepared for that. It can come any time. Srila Prabhupada repeatedly said that can come at any moment. So chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Thirdly, detachment enhances devotion. The true devotion requires internal renunciation, not necessarily giving up the world, but giving up the sense of proprietorship. And fourthly, we should listen submissively to the warnings. Parishit Maharaj did not argue with the curse. He listened, accepted, acted. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I welcome everyone